At Keystone Wilds, we're officially in the final stages of opening our doors to the public once and for all. It's certainly been a long and agonizing journey to get to this point, but we definitely could not have done it alone. Every single step of the project has been shaped by the people and animals who have been with us since day one. Our keepers, who learned all of the personality quirks of the species long before a single guest ever stepped foot in the park. Our veterinary team, who have been quietly monitoring health from the shadows, adjusting diets, and making sure that the more dramatic members of the zoo are especially taken care of. Our mechanics, who ensure operations are running at 100% behind the scenes, often long before the sun has even risen. And most importantly, the supporters who have allowed us to get to this point. The people who show up, watch, comment, and believe in this project as much as we do. Speaking of support, things have been moving steadily over at Keystone Park as well. Even with so much of the support being focused on Keystone Wilds, the original zoo hasn't been sitting still as of late. The keepers there have been sending us regular updates, and it's been comforting to see that all of the animals we started this entire journey with are thriving. Our California sea lions have especially been enjoying the cooler weather, and their training sessions have been drawing some of the biggest crowds the habitat has ever seen. Meanwhile, Bear the giant anteater, who has spent significant time at both Keystone Park and Keystone Wilds, has been having the time of his life. The team has been experimenting with different enrichment puzzles to keep him challenged, but so far he remains undefeated and thoroughly entertained. Even the entrance plaza at Keystone Park has been busier than usual thanks to a new round of community outreach events. It's a good reminder that while Keystone Wilds is our ambitious new chapter, Keystone Park is still the heart of everything that we've built up until this point. Now, with the home park thriving once again, and the morale high across both teams, it's finally time to focus on today's work here at Keystone Wilds. One of the biggest highlights this week actually comes from one of our smallest residents in the entire franchise, our baby Chinese pangolin. She's been steadily growing, getting more confident by the day, and keepers have been thrilled with how quickly she's adapting to her new routine. Her mobility is also greatly improved as she's spending a lot more time exploring the outside portions of the enclosure and testing out every single new aspect that the team throws in her direction. After hundreds of votes cast and more civil debate than we honestly expected, the community has come to the conclusion that Xiao Bao should be her new name. It directly translates to Little Treasure in Mandarin, and honestly it fits her perfectly. She's become a bright spot for the entire team, one of those animals you can't help but stop and watch even when you're supposed to be working on something else. Our keepers have been preparing a few new enrichment items sized specifically for her, including a custom-built puzzle feeder. They're hoping this is going to encourage more foraging behavior, and with how quickly she's been growing, they're already planning the next round of habitat adjustments to make sure she has plenty of room and space to mature. Watching Xiao Bao thrive has been a reminder as to why we started Keystone Wilds in the first place. Even in the middle of massive construction projects and long-term planning, moments like this, small, hopeful, and quietly meaningful, are what truly bring the entire zoo together. Keystone Wilds so far has been an absolutely amazing journey, and to finally share that journey with the masses is something that everybody on site is beyond excited for. It hasn't always been easy. Matter of fact, sometimes it's been downright challenging. But what's important is that through our hard work, dedication, and passion, we've all made it to this point together. While Keystone Park represented finding the beauty in your own backyard, starting with local wildlife found native to the region, Keystone Wilds in turn represents the beauty and wild nature of our entire planet. The only thing standing in our way at this point is the completion of our greatest project to date, Baobob Safari. Keystone Wilds has been set to open upon the completion of Africa for several months, and this knowledge is widely known among the community. Thankfully, as of very recently, the majority of Africa has finally passed inspections and is ready for the public. The completion of Baobob Safari is officially our final obstacle, the one colossal piece that pulls everything together and brings the entire African region into one coherent living ecosystem. Baobob Safari certainly has been an ambitious project from even day one, spanning multiple biomes, intersecting habitats, and a carefully managed series of mixed species enclosures. This safari is meant to be the crown jewel of all of Keystone Wilds. Every single rock, every waterfall, and every tree has been placed with purpose. The animals chosen for this experience are all carefully selected to tell the story of conservation, coexistence, and ecological scale. Each species on the reserve has a unique story to tell, and thanks to our expert tour guides backed by their 4x4 safari vehicles, you'll be able to witness these stories firsthand from the front lines. This safari ride represents something far bigger than just another exhibit. It's the emotional heartbeat of the African section, the moment that guests step onto our trucks and begin that slow, rumbling journey beneath the iconic Baobab Bridge. Our hope is that they truly feel transported into the very heart of Africa, and after a long and difficult construction process, we're finally almost there. With your help, community feedback, and the countless revisions over the past year of construction, Baobob Safari is finally ready to step into the spotlight. All that remains now is to put the final touches in place, iron out the last details, and prepare for the most anticipated opening in Keystone Wilds history. In case you missed the last episode, we built the penultimate stop on the safari by completing Pachyderm Pass. Here you're going to find 3 species between 2 habitats, starting off with our common ostrich and southern white rhinoceros enclosure. The word enclosure doesn't necessarily describe this habitat all too well, as both species can go quite far along even over the safari track. To be able to spot each member of their respected groups, you're going to have to keep your eyes peeled. Luckily, both of the species are on the larger side, so they're among the easier animals to spot if you know where to look. Our rhinoceros group, which fun fact is actually called a crash, is made up of 3 members, including Tank and Hodari. These peaceful pachyderms spend a majority of their day eating plants and grasses around the habitat. As the Zoopedia says, they're the world's largest grazer. Their enclosure was specifically designed with the southern white rhinoceros in mind, as it features not only lush grasslands they need to eat, but also arid mud pools they enjoy to wallow and stay cool in. Rhinoceros of any species aren't exactly known for their intelligence, especially when pitted against other pachyderms. However, it is impressive that they effectively invented sunscreen millions of years before man. Sharing the enclosure with our rhinoceros crash is a flock of common ostrich, the second and by far largest avian species on the reserve. Common ostriches are known for their impressive size and speed, and safari riders are going to be able to witness both firsthand as we venture far through their territory. Along the journey you may just spot Axel, our lone male of the flock. Axel is easily distinguished from the females around him by the white plumage around his backside. This is a trait only found in the males of the species, and by far the easiest way to tell them apart. As for our staff, they thankfully found this new addition to their routine to be a relatively manageable project. While rhinoceros eat a ton of food, and ostrich aren't necessarily cheap to keep either, their diet directly overlaps with other species on the safari. This means while it's an extra step on the to-do list twice a day, it's not anything brand new to learn. Sitting in between the 2 main halves of the rhinoceros and ostrich enclosure awaits the first feline of the safari. Meet our cheetahs, Duke and Kaylee. These 2 cats have grown quite accustomed to their new enclosure, and especially enjoy observing the safari vehicles as they pass by their territory. Their innate curiosity not only is going to be a draw for the guest's camera, but has also been crucial in keeping their stress levels from going nuclear. Cheetah are incredibly prone to very dangerous levels of stress, especially when situating into a new environment, and as a result, we've provided them with nearly double the typical enrichment items. Luckily, even without all of this, the duo can find joy in each other. The cheetah pair get along exceptionally well, and are nearly inseparable at times. Overall, the penultimate section of the safari is rather tame compared to what came before it, and especially what's to come after, and this was 100% by design. The reason we didn't go overboard on this habitat was because that's exactly what we have planned for in today's episode. Today there's more to be seen than can ever be seen, and more to do than can possibly be done, but that's never stopped us before. As we find our way on the path of glory, just remember, it's the circle. Let's finish Baobob Safari off once and for all, and get this zoo open. If you'd like to support the ongoing construction and development of Keystone Wilds, please consider joining Club Keystone. Members not only receive early access to videos, but your name will also be permanently etched into our wall of donors as a token of our appreciation. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. Your support isn't just appreciated, it's absolutely critical. Engagement is the fuel to the algorithm's fire, and by liking the video, leaving a comment, or even sharing it with your friends, you're helping us grow and reach an even larger audience of animal enthusiasts. The channel's growth as of late has been absolutely stunning, and with your help, that momentum's only going to continue. Thank you all for being a part of this journey, and let me know in the comments what episode of Keystone Wilds or even Keystone Park brought you to the series. The final species of Baobob Safari is the West African lion, a critically endangered subspecies of the famous feline with a wild population of 250. For having a wild population so low, their habitat range is surprisingly large. They must be spread incredibly thin as a result. Luckily for us, they only need a land requirement of about 700 square meters, so that's relatively easy compared to what we've done in the past. One thing that certainly differentiates lions from other feline species is that they're actually social animals, and prefer not to spend time alone. Today we're going to be building for a single male and a single female, and hopefully in time we'll bear some cubs. Lions are incredibly expensive to keep in captivity, as you can see by their dietary options. They're also very loud, so this is exactly why we put them at the end of the safari. Guests are going to be able to hear them the entire ways through. Obviously, as you could have guessed, lions don't have any interspecies enrichment bonuses with any other species in the game. They don't get along with hyenas. That's a well-known myth. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. They really don't get along at all. Rumor has it the last lion who tried walked away with a scar. Baobob Safari so far has some absolutely breathtaking visuals, but the finale has to blow all of them out of the water. While the first impression is key to maintain enjoyment throughout, the finale is what's going to get people talking. Today we're going to be tackling what is likely to be Keystone Wild's most iconic landmark, among some stiff competition I might add. Capping off Baobob Safari is Operation Pride Rock. While the build is certainly going to involve some backbreaking rockwork, for now, like normal, we need to lay the foundation of the habitat so we can build off of it. Planning out a build is absolutely critical to make sure the remainder of the process goes as smooth as possible. I personally like to use terrain a lot to map the future elements of the enclosures. By taking an extra few minutes to plan out your builds ahead of time, you can end up saving hours in the long run. From a behind-the-scenes look, the lion's habitat isn't going to be overly complicated. They're simply going to have two areas they can explore, both being outdoors. it'll be significantly easier to focus on the more standard environment before working on the rock formation. Let's get to work. This habitat is going to sit on 3 separate levels of elevation, so naturally we're going to have to build a rock-solid foundation before we get to the more intricate detailing. The first layer is going to be the runoff for the moat, and since the lions won't have access down here, we won't go insane with details quite yet. This is actually going to be the very last thing that guests are going to drive by on the reserve, so we'll certainly have to come back here later to make it a fair bit more memorable. For now, a simple waterfall blended into some standard terrain is going to do just fine, with the added detail of having the trucks be able to drive over some of the shallow flowing water. This definitely looks good enough for now, and down here technically isn't even part of the habitat, so we can definitely leave this for later. Let's travel up the waterfall and work on some of the safety features. The West African lion's habitat is going to be situated on top of this cliff, and while it looks nearly impossible to be able to see them from the ground, just remember that the guests aren't going to be standing on the ground. Our safari vehicles provide nearly 5 feet of elevation, meaning that the guests are surely going to get an amazing view of the finale. To start, we're going to have to make sure the view isn't too good, as lions and guests don't tend to mix. In a worst-case scenario, this fence running through the water should keep the lions at bay. The water's deep enough to prevent any jumps over, and the fence itself is climb-proof. From here, it was surprisingly simple to blend everything together, starting with our standard foliage palette of creosote bushes and buffalo grass, and then building up the cliff face using the exact same rock palette we'd use for the runoff. I'm actually quite happy with the look of things so far, and now that we've maximized guest safety, I think we can officially start on the flashier part of the habitats. Pride Rock isn't exactly the most complex shape ever made. However, because it's so basic, if we don't capture it absolutely perfectly, it's not going to look very good at all. Like with our waterfall, it makes by far the most sense to start with the base and work our way up. If you've ever seen the film, or in general just know what Pride Rock looks like, you'll likely recall that there's 2 distinct features. The first is the path that the lions walk out on to observe their subjects, and the second is the absolutely gigantic backdrop of said catwalk. Naturally, we're going to work from the ground up, which means we're going to be starting with the foundation and viewing portion first. I've already gone ahead and placed a very small patch of tall grass. This is going to act as our target for the support beam holding the massive structure in place. Of course, it's all being made out of rock. Pride Rock in the films is shown throughout a variety of different times of day, so it's going to be a bit tricky to nail down the color scheme exactly correct. Sometimes it looks more red, and the other times it looks more to be a muted gray. Today we're going to be going with a look to make it fit in of not only the source material, but also the rest of the reserve. This means we're mainly going to be using temperate rocks with some taiga and tropical mixed in for texture. The catwalk appears to jut out at around a 30-degree angle, so it's imperative we capture the basic shaping of this, otherwise the entire build is going to fall apart. For now, we don't have to worry about the fine details. Let's just get the skeleton looking exactly size accurate. One other thing to take note of is that the West African lion is a base game species, and these typically have notoriously poor hitboxes, meaning we're going to have to keep the ground as flat as humanly possible, leaving absolutely no traversable area to chance. Once I found the shaping to be acceptable and was fairly confident that even the most finicky species in the game would easily be able to climb the structure, I began to polish up the ground layer. To detail Pride Rock is actually quite simple. We just have to use a few more rocks and difficult textures around the rough skeleton. We'll certainly delve more into how to do this later, because let me tell you, this was the easy part. Far and away the most challenging aspect of this entire enclosure is easily going to be the enormous rock formation that sits right behind our catwalk, and to build this accurately, with also it being functional, we're going to have to get a little bit creative. To start, I copied over exactly what we just made. If you recall, it was critical to make it as flat as possible, and referring back to our reference picture, the front of Pride Rock looks pretty flat to me. Getting the angle exactly right wasn't the easiest thing we've ever done on the channel, especially since in the films it's a bit exaggerated, but eventually I got something I was finally happy with. The next step was to build up the sides of Pride Rock, and this was easily the most challenging aspect of the process. I started by making 2 tall towers of under-detailed rocks on either side of the flat formation we just installed. The job of these rocks is simply to hold the corners together, and provide us with a safe place to merge even more of the copied portion throughout. Now with the place for everything to meet up, I could then again take the copied flat portion and use that to capture all of the iconic angles as accurately as possible. By creatively reusing the base's support structure, we were even able to capture some crucial shaping and detail on the base of the enclosure side. It took a really long time, and admittedly it still looks a little bit rough around the edges, but I'm finally in a place where I can start to see the final vision. All we have left to do is polish it up now, but that's a lot easier said than done. First and foremost, we need to get rid of the temporary rock towers on the sides, as they no longer serve a purpose now that everything is in place. Once they were gone, however, we were left with 2 large ravines running vertically down the formation. To eliminate any and all gaps, we had to tweak the angles a tad more, as well as add in some more rocks with a bit of purpose to the empty spaces. Once that step was finally complete and the shaping was for the most part finalized, we had to do something about all of the repetitive textures littering the rock. This is an unfortunate downside of building with a considerable amount of reused assets, but there is a very easy workaround. All we have to do is quite simply layer thin rocks around the already reused textures. I tried my best to do this in layers that make it appear as a slightly different color as you get closer and closer to the spire. It's certainly time consuming for a minute and subtle effect, but I quite like the way it turned out. And surprisingly, that was the end of Pride Rock, and I have to say I'm extremely happy with how it turned out. And as the land surrounding it develops even further with some foliage and additional rockwork, it'll look even better. Now though, we have an entire lion habitat to build, as Pride Rock was just a simple feature of the larger overall picture. With the backdrop finally in place, we can officially start focusing on the final stop of Baobob Safari. Thankfully, much earlier in the build process, we used the terrain tools to map out precisely where we want the borders to be, so adding in the gate and the accompanying null barriers was especially simple. To make sure we don't lose the invisible wall's location, we'll draw over the revised version one more time using the terrain tools. Now that we have the rough dimensions finalized, I want to focus on the lion's enrichment items. They were placed very intentionally within the habitat in order to give the guest the best possible chance of seeing the lions interacting with various aspects up close. Our secret weapon, though, are located on the tip of the catwalk, as the hidden blood scent marker and food tray are going to allow the lions to use this space of the habitat fairly often. It's going to be rare, but it's certainly going to be possible to see the lions on the rock in their iconic pose from the safety of your passing by vehicle. From here we used a basic technique repeated in nearly every single episode of the Safari series. By building up a layer of rock and foliage by using our palette of creosote bush and buffalo grass to blend it in, we can efficiently make a very nice natural barrier to keep our lions contained. Next, I started by using the terrain tools to get a variety of textures on the ground using the terrain paint features, and then amplified everything by placing a full layer of buffalo grass and faux rocks over top. It's a bit tricky to tell from above, but this habitat uses significantly more elevation than it would appear. This is in an effort to hide the lions when they don't want to be seen by the guests. While the guests certainly should be able to spot our lions most of the time, the rest of the habitat won't typically be within view. This means we don't have to go absolutely overboard on the details like we usually do. But trust me when I say if the details are what you want, just wait for the full tour of Baobob Safari coming next week. This is officially going to mark the opening of Keystone Wilds to the public, and I couldn't be happier with the progress we've made in such a short amount of time. The Safari is certainly the greatest achievement out of any Keystone property, and now it's nearly 100% completed. Let's make that officially 100% and welcome in our last residents. Once our West African lions finally entered their home, a wave of relief swept over the entirety of Keystone Wilds. After so many back-breaking builds, late nights, and countless hours of work, Keystone Wilds is officially in its final stages of opening. We definitely still have final preparations to make before the gates officially open to the public, but for now, let's meet the newest members of the family. Our Pride of Lions may only have 2 members, but they seem to greatly enjoy their new home so far. As usual, if you have any name suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Just know I won't be able to fit 30 different Simba comments on screen. Our lions were certainly a bit hesitant to explore their habitat, especially the Pride Rock portion, which typically would have been a bit disappointing. However, our patience was eventually rewarded. After our head keeper led the way, the Pride, who we soon realized, just like many cats, were food motivated, quickly followed behind. The 2 lions on their iconic rock is truly among the best sights in all of Keystone Park and Keystone Wilds together. The safari guests are going to be in awe at the spectacle. As per our initial observations, just like in the films, it appears that the male enjoys the vantage point a fair bit more. Our lioness much prefers to explore the main portions of the habitat, and is especially fond of all of the enrichment items scattered about. Thanks to our prior planning, we got the height of the habitat exactly correct. From the elevated position of the safari vehicles, the lion are going to be in perfect view. Lion typically spend a majority of the day resting, however the desire to hunt sometimes is still present. Knowing this, our keepers have been preparing food for the Pride using our zebra piñatas to simulate their natural predator-prey relationship. This is one of many examples of a way Keystone Wilds can stimulate the minds of our animals. The duo certainly seems to enjoy it, but let's see what it looks like from the guest perspective. Of course, that's going to be one of the most important angles we can possibly get in the entire reserve. After rounding the final stretch of Pachyderm Pass, you're immediately greeted with the silhouette of the Pride Rock. It's a bit difficult to tell, but it looks like we actually got incredibly lucky, and our male lion is currently on top of the rock as we speak. The sheer scale of this build is rather impressive compared to anything that we've built before, and that doesn't even include the giant baobab tree that we're about to loop around. We're certainly going to have to do a lot of foliage work off screen to hide Pride Rock from the rest of the safari. We want this to be a surprise for guests at the very end. Before the official tour, again coming up next week, we're also going to be eliminating all open grasslands like you see right ahead of us. This is completely against Keystone Wilds' quality. We want this to be absolutely immersive, so we're going to be hiding that before the final product. If I was a safari rider, personally I'd want to see the lions come on Pride Rock here. This is as close as you're going to get to them, and you're on the loop for a fair bit of time, probably about 20 to 30 seconds total. If you could somehow time a safari ride of the feeding times of one of the lions, that view would be absolutely spectacular, and with some luck you might even hear them roar. But unfortunately, as you can see off in the distance, that is the back of the mountain pass station, which means after this final loop, Baobob Safari is officially concluded, but let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. This mini-series has been incredibly difficult, but also incredibly rewarding. It was my first time trying a project of this scale, and I think we knocked it out of the park, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Unfortunately though, as we round the final corner of Baobob Safari, I think that's all the time we have left for today's episode. I'll catch you next week at the official tour of Baobob Safari. It's going to be an epic video, so be sure to stick around. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Kingpin out.